right, we all set? Welcome this afternoon. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's an area that both Misty and I refer to as one of the deal killers for SBIR, STTR proposals. And even though we may have a study approach, research design, and methods that are top tier, we have seen many occasions where SBIR phase one proposals are declined because of a very poor commercialization plan, including those that are just simply seeking commercialization opportunity. So this is an opportunity that we would like all of you to take today. We have, we're honored to have Dr. Sean Jasso, who is professor of the UC Riverside Anderson School of Business, and his research specialties are in management and political economy, and in particular, with regard to management, operations management, and so forth, communication planning, leadership, marketing, corporate governance, entrepreneurship, ethics, and on the political economy side, Dr. Jasso is also a specialist in international relations, competition, global and national, both politics and institution and public policy. He is an expert in business management, business planning, development, and so forth. This is going to be a very valuable hour and a half with Dr. Jasso, and let's look forward to hearing from him and gleaning as much as we can to help us put together a much more fundable communication or commercialization plan, that is to say. So, Dr. Jasso, over to you. You're good to go.
Thank you, everybody. Good to be with you. And what a great opportunity for all of you to be part of this great seminar. I want to thank Martin for his outstanding patience in creating this thing for you all. Misty's been great help. And I know how, what a great challenge it is to get everyone here and to listen to us, to talk to you, and hopefully bring something of good value. What I'm going to do is a bit unique. I'm going to take this to you. I'm going to hopefully involve you, and maybe Misty, you could help me along. The way we're doing this, I want to somehow have access to all of our participants. We'll see how that goes. But I'm going to walk you through a talk that will bring insights to you. I know that many of you are in many variations of the, let's just call it the entrepreneurial journey. And this may be the first time, the second time, or maybe even the last time you do this. Bringing an idea to the market is not easy. So let's begin, and let me share with you what I have in mind today. We're going to call this the entrepreneurial journey. And again, I'll ask Misty if she could be sort of my eyes and ears on any issues that we may have. So let's begin this talk. I'm going to share with you the plan of our time together. And by the way, just for some logistics, I can only see me and I can only see this screen. The plan of our time together actually is going to be 1 hour. So at 2:01, we'll be on our way. The big questions we're going to deal with: the reason you exist, the big solution, which is your product, the big pitch or demonstration of your idea through an element of commercialization, the big mistakes, we'll talk about those and how to fix them. And then I want to hear from you. I'd like to try to hear from you if we can get some engagement. Let's talk first about the entrepreneur. Mindful that you've had variations of the theme of the entrepreneur. Since I am a professor in a business school and you are part of a university program, let's understand the mindset of the entrepreneur. So what is it? This is what it is. The French term is the undertaker. What are you undertaking? You're undertaking enterprise. You're creating supply and demand. By the way, the difference between the entrepreneur, which are these pieces here, entrepreneur, these characteristics, the entrepreneurship is when we actually create market impact, which is very difficult to do. And that's, I think, why you're here. The status quo to the entrepreneur is unacceptable. In fact, oftentimes the entrepreneur might be just bored. That's the tinkerer, if you will, in the garage, in the lab, finding solutions out of just ultimately boredom. If you look at Eli Whitney, the creator of the cotton gin, 1791, he wasn't he wasn't trying to fix the problem of the picking the cotton seed off out of the cotton flower as it is. He was just he just happened to be part of. He was actually visiting his future wife and their family on a plantation, and he recognized, my goodness, that's a very difficult thing to pick that seed out of the cotton flower. And so he started tinkering around just out of boredom and curiosity. The entrepreneur, as all of you likely are, you're not averse to risk. We often hear that the entrepreneur is the risk taker. We also hear this term that I think is overly used. It's kind of that hot shot term of ideation. I'll talk about that in a moment. Entrepreneurs are also desperate in the sense that maybe they need to, the marketplace, the labor market has dried up, and they have some skills and they want to just ultimately create something out of desperation. More specifically, they need to pay the bills, which leads us to this wealth piece. Prosperity seeking is a big drive of the entrepreneur. I'm not quite sure I buy the fact that we create things just because it's clever, it's cool, it's noble. I do believe that, but I also am quite convinced that there's a wealth element to this. And I'll show you a couple of things that you might enjoy reading. So I'll use the word punk, just like the old school punk rocker of the 70s and 80s. They changed things forever. They changed the rules. In the sense, they're an agent of change. So let's get into some other issues here. You might remember, some of you may anyway, in 1987, this was the earthquake in Whittier, known as the Whittier earthquake. So you can see here, there's a problem. The earthquake, 6.1, actually killed more than 2, but ultimately really tore up a community. So let me, I would, Misty, are you there? Come in, Misty.
I'm here.
Okay, now let me ask you a logistics question. Are we able to, because I can't see everyone in the big spread, so I can't call on people, which is completely fine. Is there a way to do that?
They can raise their hands.
Okay. So let's try that. Let me actually come out of here. I can't see them raising any hands.
In the panelist screen, do you see where a few people, Kieran and Devin, have raised their hands?
Hang on a second. No, I don't.
Click participants in the nav bar down below where it says chat, record. You should be able to see the participants. And then also you can ask them to put questions or answers in the Q&A as well.
No problem. Hang on just one second.
When you click participants, there should be 2 tabs. One says panelists and one says attendees. You would want to click the attendees.
You guys having fun? I am. All right. I'd like for someone to, let's innovate this. Let's go back to the, let me have someone just sort of jump in, and I want to hear from you. What's the opportunity here? Speak. What's the opportunity? Go ahead.
I was going to ask Hannah if we can just open it up for those who want to respond, or do they have to use a raised hand?
I think what's happening is that it's muted. So the raised hands, when I click that, it basically they're muted, they can only chat. So we need to somehow change that in the settings. I didn't set this up.
Not a problem. I'll let you guys manage the settings. But so I'm going to continue on. Let me just speak through this.
So Jared says a brick business. So you are getting some comments over here in the Q&A if you want to open that. So Jared says a brick business. Kieran, what do you have to say? Go ahead and just throw it in the chat.
Cleanup.
Cleanup business, brick
Rebuilding.
business, build. Okay, good. So from one's destruction comes great opportunity. Well, let me show you. Does anyone know what that is? Scott, I can see you. You know what that is?
I should, but I don't. I've seen it before, but I actually don't know what it is.
Okay, guys, this is a gas wrench that turns off the gas.
Oh, I've got one that looks a lot different. Yeah, okay, that's why it looks
different. Little variations on the theme.
Yeah.
So this is really an attempt not necessarily to talk to you about earthquakes and gas wrenches, but more so to give you some insights on my background. I was not very nice of Martin to read all of that bio of me, but my background in entrepreneurship goes back to sort of grassroots. This is my father and I, just a couple of, actually within the year, we were in Vietnam, and we were looking at entrepreneurial opportunity there. And there's a whole lot of it. But I grew up with this guy here. He's still around, he's still doing great. And that's just about a year or so old. I grew up with this guy looking at this, and then within like a week, we had 1,000 of these wrenches in our garage, and he would start selling them. In other words, he saw opportunity out of anything, and he saw the opportunity out of, in this case, in this example, an earthquake. And sure enough, the problem was that we had huge gas leaks and no one had a gas wrench. He saw that opportunity, he filled it, he commercialized it in the sense that he used grassroots commercialization. He just made it happen. I know you're here to get some insights on commercialization almost in a applied way. I'm going to talk about that, but I'd like to give you the real nuts and bolts of how to deliver your idea. So let's move forward. So there's my father, there's me in Vietnam, doing entrepreneurship, kind of looking for the earthquakes and the bricks of opportunity there. So let me just give you some quick examples of, let me just show you a couple of examples of real simple, you can call them pitches if you want, but they're just, the simplicity is what I'm really after. So just give me 1 second. So here's an interesting one. Here's literally some of our own work here at the university, prepared by a group here within our own workshops, if you will. These guys had, I won't show you the whole thing, but I'll just show you how they took a problem and made it into reality. The problem here was bike theft on campus. And they're showing the problem just like the earthquakes. The problem was that we have locks, we have real locks that are complicated and they're heavy and they're expensive. These guys prototyped and created something out of nothing. What is it? They call it the bike lock kit. They call it Block It, and it really is cool. It's an actual. It's part of this. It's part of the pedal. The useful part of the pedal is the square shape, and that is what we all need. Extra part of the pedal is just for decoration. Okay, and so it goes into the very simple layout of presenting the problem, presenting the opportunity, ultimately showcasing prototypes. If you don't have a prototype, you're sort of just making things up. And then it gets into what I'll show you shortly. Maybe you've seen these concepts, maybe you haven't, but let me show it to you in simplicity. The size of the market is essential. Again, this is just a quick snapshot, a quick example. I'll show you another one. let's take a look at, hang on one second. Here's one. This is a group, a team on hematology redefined. This is getting blood from people. So here's a group that we, right from our university, showcasing who they are in a very simple, elegant way. Our goal is to change and simplify the process for both patients and healthcare providers. We also aim to increase patient control of their own healthcare. So what's the problem? Current blood tests take more blood than necessary. It can be a long and difficult process to find an actual vein, and blood is a hazard and cannot be shipped internationally. So these guys came up with, one of the teammates worked directly in the group. And so again, they recognize first and foremost and understanding this what we call the total available market, a term you need to know. And if you didn't know, you now do. I'll show you how to get this information in just a moment. Includes so this is a $7.6 billion industry, if you will, in terms of let's just call it the blood collection industry. The serviceable available market, 19.3 million. This is the amount of people in the US visiting clinics regularly to get blood tests. And then the actual obtainable market is 3.79 million. This is the amount of people in the South Bay of California. Again, segmenting, regionalizing who our customer ultimately really is. And then it gets into the products itself, showcases the products in its simplicity, and really, you can't commercialize anything if you can't explain it in simple elegance. And again, it goes on and showcases how it works. Let me show you one more. Actually, let's show you, hang on one second. What I wanted to show was probably one of the more complicated ones to show you what not to do. But let's go back to the recording. I'm sorry, the presentation I want to show you, and move into other ways of thinking about this. I was going to ask Martin if we could show his one of the samples that he shared with me. And it's an interesting piece. I'm going to ask him maybe to share it with you personally later. It's a highly redacted version. And I give Martin a good grade on it, while at the same time showing and explaining to you that his commercialization has enormous complexity to it. And my theme today, my hope is that you can leave our time together with, I need to simplify, I need clarity. So let's continue. Again, thinking from the point of view of the entrepreneur, which is you. This is a cool snapshot of really what's going on here. This is where you're blending the expertise. This is what you can do for society, your passion. This is why you're doing what you are doing for society, and the opportunity. This is what you believe you can create for not only yourself, but also the market. And inside there is that so-called sweet spot. That's where you want to really, that's what you're trying to commercialize. In other words, you're trying to create demand, but you have to supply the good first. So the big questions, the reason you exist, let's get into that. So the big questions, all right? The big questions, not just of entrepreneurship, but the big questions in business in general. Does our company really matter, okay? If we left the market, would anyone really care? Who would be the stakeholders that would be sort of left behind? From an entrepreneur's perspective, if your company never existed, if the product that you were trying to commercialize and bring to market never existed, the world would be worse off because why? Fill in the blank. If your company never existed, who would be worse off? Maybe, by the way, you would be worse off because you wouldn't have created revenue. That's the desperation piece in the extreme. Another question is, what is the purpose of a business enterprise in the first place? Something to take away from our meeting today. The purpose of a business is ultimately, and this is a classic, and if you can get this If you can nail this idea and embrace it, it's really simple. It's to create customers. And if you have that understanding of customer creation, indeed, you can then bring, you have a market-centric point of view. You're going to be able to move your idea closer into reality. So what about the product, the big solution, which is your product? Let's deal with that for just a minute. Does anyone know what this is? You can certainly pipe right in if you want. Look at that nice disaster. This is the Ofo Bike Company. It's a bike sharing company out of Beijing, China, established in 2014. I'll let you just sit on that image for a while as I speak. The Ofo, O-F-O, by the way, the Ofo Bike Sharing Company was responding to this big, the so-called sharing economy. You've heard that before. And I'm sure you really love what we have in Southern California. We have the Bird. It's the scooter, very similar. It's not a bike, but it's the scooter in terms of the ride share, the sharing app device. In 2014, the company comes to the marketplace and produces millions of bikes. Millions are sharing the bikes, over 150 plus cities. It's just crazy. Valued at $2 billion, and 48 months later, the thing is absolutely a complete disaster, a complete bankrupt nightmare. This is the example that I'll get to at the end of this talk, which is ultimately, obviously they scaled too fast. They were arrogant. They were not customer-centered. They believed that they had a problem to solve, but they also believed, and here's something important, they were trying to commercialize when they had no sense of really what the market was asking. The market didn't need 10 million bikes across 100 plus cities in 20 countries. Maybe over 10 to 15 years, this could have been clever, but not in 2 years, 3 years, and in year 4, it's a complete disaster. Remember that image forever of what not to do. Now, again, these guys had all types of opportunity. Alibaba investing in them, all of the big shots, all of the funding. But guess what happened? The funding dried up because they realized that they were way over their head. They had terrible cash flow problems. And here's another key point. And I'll give you a list, a sort of checklist, if you will. But the thing that really took flight off of a cliff was that they had no sense of their business model. They didn't know how to make money. They had backing from a lot of capital, if you will. Also, there was some, this is a Chinese-based company, so there's some Chinese-based funding, also some state funding as well, and it just completely went to pieces. So let's look at, again, the product is essential. What do you do with the product? That's really the key. And how do you manage it? I'll talk about those in more details in a moment. So I'm going to call this piece the big pitch. These are the essentials, getting closer to recognizing what to do and what not to do. But we need to start with, and again, I think this is a great opportunity for you, wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, no matter how advanced you are in terms of obtaining bringing your product to market. If you're already in the marketplace, then you're in business. Good job. Maybe you need different types of funding. Maybe you just need more customers. Maybe you need all kinds of things that are very unique to you. But I'm certain that these will be helpful in giving you some things to think about in terms of asking the right questions. Are we asking the right questions to solve the right problems? By the way, you know what these guys were trying to solve? They were being influenced by the climate change politics. These guys believed, and maybe rightly so, that there was a push to urban bicycling. That was going to be the new way that people were going to get around. That's sort of true, but it wasn't in the oversaturation. They had the right clever product, but they just had no sense of really where the market was. Back to the right questions to solve the right problems. I want you to think about this. This is quite a good, an interesting way to look at entrepreneurship. Remember, by the way, I said entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur is you. You have all of those characteristics that we just described. You're the risk taker. You're the one who has the great idea and you're wanting to bring it to the marketplace. But entrepreneurship is when you actually, again, as I said, create market impact. You can have all of the greatest ideas in the world, but then you might not make market impact, or you might make market impact and then operationally you're a disaster and you have hundreds of millions of used bikes in piles in the ash heap of what was a great opportunity. The pursuit of opportunity beyond the resources currently controlled. Professor Stevenson out of Harvard, I like the idea of opportunity. He does a nice he positions it quite well. Here's another way of thinking about opportunities. Entrepreneurship is shaping and exploiting opportunities where others see challenges or chaos or contradiction. In other words, they're telling you you can't do it. You're going to say, well, we can do it, and here's how, and here's why. This is from Bates out of the London Business School. So let's move to the whole business. Remember when I talked about ideation? Ideas are not the same as opportunities. Again, this is meant to help you rethink, reshape, refine, or reaffirm how you're going to ultimately dive into funding opportunities, bringing your marketing, bringing your plan into operation, and actually creating and sustaining your first customer. Ideas are not the same as opportunities. Think about this. Ideas are actually, everyone has ideas. They're free. Here's an idea, but it's not necessarily an opportunity. Ideas are resource dependent. They're also perishable. An idea today can be gone tomorrow. It's easy to have an idea, but it's hard to seize it into an opportunity. So what do we do about this? Ingredients for entrepreneurial activity, what you're actually engaged in. This is why the idea of a technology cluster, you're in one right now. You're in a technology cluster, an academic environment that has outreach to the broader community. Networks, people, and financing. This is entrepreneurial activity. Educational hubs like this one. You also want to have what we call exit routes. What are you going to do ultimately say as you might say an exit strategy? Once you build your firm and it's actually commercialized, and commercializing is simply means, have you created entrepreneurship? Do you have you penetrated the market? Have you sold your first bike? And you need private and public markets to do that. Private markets could be in terms of funding, as an example. Someone's going to buy the firm. Someone's going to help partner with you. Banking opportunities to get funding, or even the public markets at the high level of IPOs. Here's a nice presentation, I think, of really what's going on with all of you right now. Where are you? And you need to be able to ask the question and answer the question about, what is the value that I have in the connectedness with the private sector, with government? Do I, for example, in terms of political and economic, do you know the regulatory environment? Do you know the rules of the game that are going to guide you and give you sort of the public policy domain to compete in that marketplace? In terms of access to capital, could you get $10,000 or $100,000 tomorrow? If you can't, what are you doing about it? In terms of the entrepreneurial education, that's why I think you're here in this conference. You're going to be getting constant access. You want to pursue entrepreneurial education by doing lots and lots of reading. Let me pause for just a second. There are so many books on entrepreneurship. They're actually quite fun. Some of them are quite funny, but not all of them are quite good. I'm going to give you a couple that you really need to have on your shelf, just to keep things basic, to keep the fundamentals first and foremost in your mindset. All right. So let's there's an example of that cluster environment, and ultimately you need to be engaged in a competitive environment. What is competition? This is one of the key takeaways I hope for you today. Competition is not just your rival, but it's that force that compels you and me to bring excellence to the game, to make things better. You may have heard just a couple of days ago, Elon Musk was talking about his entrance into the marketplace for Tesla. And what he said was quite, it's probably going to be one of those, it was a tape recorded thing. In other words, it's one of those things caught on video. And he said something to the effect that you can't just differentiate, right? But you have to differentiate at the highest level, at the highest level of excellence. Differentiation isn't good enough. Some of you may be familiar with the concept of blue ocean strategy. If you're not, email me and I can tell you all about it later. But that's one way of sort of, in terms of entrepreneurial activity, commercialization, actually entering the market and selling your first product with a consumer that will sustain you. Think of the idea of entering the market in an uncontested marketplace. And how do you do that? And who are the people who do that? It's usually companies like, say, JCPenney that are desperate and have to really reinvent retail, or it's a startup or a new entrant like you, and you have to compete with everybody else. But how are you going to do it? You're going to differentiate in a massive way that really changes the game in its entirety. So competition is absolutely essential. Remember about competition as well. Competition not only forces us to be excellent because we have to innovate, but competition also forces transparency in the marketplace. The more competitive a market is, the more transparent, the more information symmetry we have, the more we know about sort of everything, if you will. The less competitive, then we get into the danger zone of what we call information asymmetry. We don't have all complete information, up to and including engaging in fraud. So competition is key. One more point, in terms of competitive markets, the more global the market is, the more access to global markets you have, no matter how small or large your company is or aims to be. If you have access to global markets, you have access to not just resources that may not be close to you or even available to you, you are forced to be more transparent. Think about that. And that's, I hope, a key takeaway for competition. So where do opportunities come from? Instead of just ideas, opportunities, which is, I think, one of the reasons why you're here, they come from large scale trends. Fill in the blank. I think the opportunity for the Ofo bike company was that there was a trend in the so-called sharing economy, a response to, say, the Airbnb creation, if you will, in 2008. That sharing economy then just got into the climate change economy and so on. So large scale trends, observable, substantiated, and legitimate. These are where opportunities come from. Look at the fourth one. To fix something broken is an opportunity. I'm sure that the products that you are preparing, thinking about, or trying to bring to the market are really trying to fix something that's broken. Opportunities are highly dependent on research and analysis. And one of the things I want to show you, should our Zoom environment work, I want to show you, or at least tell you, if we don't get to showing you, I want you to listen to me. One of the reasons why you have access to this university's resources, you can't get resources like we can. We have, for example, databases, not just of data, but we have resources, particularly in the business school universe, to industry reports and industry analysis that you don't have, unless you're part of the university system and you know how to use that element of the research, say the libraries, for example. But we have access to the leading industrial analyses that really showcase, for example, Can you tell us where is your industry going? What's its growth rate? What's the total profit available in your industry? What is the total revenue created in your industry? Here, listen to me closely. If you can't answer those simple questions, you may have a brilliant idea, but your opportunity needs a bit more research. And to commercialize something means that someone's going to not only help you with funding, but it's also going to be that you have a very clear, let's just call it marketing plan to really engage and create customers. If you don't have that industrial clarity through the data, through the latest and greatest, you can observe this and have intuition. I'm not, don't get me wrong there, but why work so hard when you have access to us? We have those opportunities for you to help you field those complexities of simply what is the profitability, growth rate, the economics, if you will, of the industry. You have to know that stuff or no one's going to listen to you because they won't take you seriously. Look at the last one, something successful elsewhere. It worked over there. Now we may be able to bring it over here. I think that's what OFO was doing quite well. It worked over there in that city, a developing city, say in China, a growing city, and then in Singapore, let's bring it over there. This is where opportunities come from. There's two approaches that are key. The ideation process, which I talked about earlier, which is kind of that it's a trendy type of way of thinking, but it's useful. It's opportunity thinking, as we say. And then there's this business of design thinking. Let me show you the difference between the two. Think of ideation, which you likely have done already. Well, it depends on where you are in your process. But a typical approach to innovating is this ideation process. By the way, I don't necessarily like the term. I think it's a bit overly used, but we have to know it because that's what people expect you to know. In other words, to simplify, what's the real problem you're trying to solve? We've talked about problem identification. Can you sketch out a model and prototype of how the thing actually works? I showed you that in the bicycle example. They had a very clear prototype. By the way, they never really made one yet, but they actually brought it to the idea close enough to get to have someone pay attention to them and actually win some awards down the line. Brainstorming, we hear that term a lot. Brainstorming is just sort of really crafting around the idea of cost-benefit analysis, or what does it look like if we do this versus that? And then this worst possible case scenario is, as I said in the very beginning, if we don't actually do this, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? If we don't install the new bike lock, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, the worst thing that can happen is that we're going to continue to have heavy kryptonite locks, and our bikes are going to still continue to be stolen. So that gives us reason to continue to pursue opportunity. A more sophisticated way of looking at things is the business. Well, I'll show you that in just a second. I mentioned this, and I want to not overlook this. You need to know these fundamentals, and you need to know them rapidly. You need to know them authentically. The sort of the business of the industry and the market size. And I showed you a sample of that in one of those presentations. I'll give you more insights right now. The market size, let's say, for example, the total microchip market, maybe it's several $1 billion in total available market capacity. The serviceable addressable market. Too often when people try to engage the market, they're thinking of they want to attack the entire microchip market when in fact you have to know your serviceable, obtainable market, our direct market. Who is our real customer? Here's another sort of visual of the same thing, a variation on the same thing. Here's what you're really trying to do, but you have to be mindful that this is really the growth opportunity should you continue to have success, should you have cash flow and the ability to grow and ultimately scale. Here's an example of the furniture business, the size of the market, here's the total revenue available in the furniture manufacturing industry, nearly 30 billion in the United States. Well, your company wants to make new stand-up desks. Those are because you know that those are popular and everyone is standing up in their office. So the share of the desk manufacturing is nearly 7 billion right here. But what about you? What are you capable of doing? Your competitive market share for specific stand-up desk is 220 million. That's what you want a piece of. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to attack that piece right here? Let's just maybe draw a little dot right there. That's going to be you. A newer approach from ideation is what we're going to call design thinking. This is the traditional way of looking at a design for your client. In this case, your client is you. So let's see if you can pass the test. Is there a desirability for this product? What we actually want? Is there a need? Yes, some humans don't necessarily know they know what they want yet, but is there really a need for this or a desire? Feasibility. Is it technologically possible to create this thing now or ever? Who would have ever imagined that you can, that SpaceX could shoot a rocket up, offload its delivery, and then return back down to a marked X on a platform? That was a need, indeed. We needed that to recycle space flight. Technologically possible, that's where all of the R&D for SpaceX and Tesla goes into, making sure that that rocket returns back down to Earth, standing straight up. I'm sure you've seen that. Viability. Is it economically doable? What do we mean by that? It's not just technologically possible, but do we have the resources, the funds, and more so, once we engage the market, can we sustain it? More specifically, do we have customers? So the design thinking approach context, number one, think about this. And again, I'm telling you this today in our short time today together, is if you can sort of pass this test, before you bring this to a funder, before you further funding, or even if you have just barely thought of your idea, you're sort of still in the tinkering around phase. Make sure that you can use this to see if you can pass the test. Number one, in terms of thinking about design, do you have empathy in your approach? Maybe it's cultural sensitivity. Maybe it's the overall context of where your marketplace is at that time, the true need of your prospective consumer. Second, we need to define what problem, again, are we really trying to solve? What problem are we really trying to solve? Should we have our Zoom capacity working okay? Maybe we'll do a couple of little exercises, but that's okay if we don't. You have now the toolkit. Ideate, another word, another overly used word, but there it is again, creeping into our design thinking. Crafting the idea through brainstorming, and again, worst possible ideas. If we don't actually build this, what's the worst thing that can happen? Similarly, here's the worst possible idea. Will it actually work? Because if you have the worst possible idea, like the cheapest bike in the world, and just put a little app on it, maybe that's not too bad. Prototype, ensuring total engagement with the user. In other words, focus group stuff is one way of looking at this, bringing in the user, the prospective user, to test it. Do you like the way the curvature is? Do you like the way the switch works? What do you like, dislike? While at the same time, not necessarily letting the customer completely run the operation. They have a place, but they're not in charge of the company. You are. And finally, testing it, putting it out into implementation, and then ultimately seeing what works and ultimately what doesn't work. What happened with the bike was that they tested the market, they scaled it like crazy, everyone loved it, it was the newest and greatest thing, but then at the same time as their growth, they were massively in debt and they were massively completely disconnected from the actual size of the market. In fact, if I can go back to the bike, this is what they were trying to achieve. They built it for the total available market, when in fact they should have gone in a linear way to grow in a measured way. They went just blasted out to the total available market, built bikes for everybody. By the way, there was competition out there and they were making things better, faster, cheaper than the OFO bike. Now, we're going to get into the last couple of things, and then I'll open the floor for discussion. Let's talk about the big mistakes of the entrepreneur, particularly in bringing your product to the marketplace, but more specifically, I think, thinking about also in the design phase and also implementation phase. And then let's see if we can redirect it back to you and the opportunity on the table here. First of all, here's a couple of guys you want to have on your bookshelf. I'll show you their books in a second. He's probably quite famous. Some of you might know Guy Kawasaki. You have to have his book on the shelf just because it's the real true playbook. And then James Watt, this guy here, this young guy here is, they're the authors of these books. So maybe go have some fun, go to Amazon and get The Art of the Start 2.0, probably the best real true entrepreneur book around. There's gazillions of entrepreneur books written by people who are really smart or have no business writing entrepreneurship books at all, but that's the one you want, okay? If you get the first one over here, The Art of the Start 1.0, it's a classic. It's a brilliant, really sort of showcases everything you need to do. 2.0 is just a newer version of the same, so you can get the 2.0. Business for Punks, I talked about the punk theme in the very beginning. This guy built this Brewdog brewery, really changing the way we buy beer in the UK. And it's now entering foreign markets as well. By the way, he's doing quite well in even amidst a pandemic. So are you ready to explain something complex with simple elegance? Okay, so let's go forward here. Let's test your 60-second pitch. Now, wherever you are in this conference in terms of pitching, pitching to the big shots that you were hearing from earlier, the government institutions, those with all of the money, you need to be able to speak simply with, and deliver clarity. Here's a nice pitch deck for you. I've highlighted the things in red, which are the absolute essentials. Name of the company. Do you have a name? What is the problem you are trying to solve? What does the company do? What do you actually do? Explain in simple detail. What is your business model? This is a major takeaway from today. Remember that a business model, we hear the term a lot. Business model, if you ask the person on the street or even a person in business school without having had the training yet, they often think of the business model as the organizational structure, the design of the firm, the CEO, the VPs, that functional looking org chart. In fact, it's not that at all. It's the simple question, how do we make money? The OFO bike company had a terrible business model. They were entirely reliant on funding by investors, and the actual renting of the bike was not coming close to what they needed to ultimately pay the bills. Business model answers the question, how we make money. What is the size of the market? I gave you some examples of that earlier. What is your product? Got a prototype? How does it really work? You want to commercialize this thing? Do you have a product that actually works? Oh, it's kind of working. It's kind of in production. No one's really interested. They might be interested in what it ought to be or what it can be or its promise, but the true engagement with the market, to create that market, it has to be a working product and it has to be simple. It has to be that bike set that just opens and closes beautifully. What is your USP, unique selling proposition? Maybe it's your secret sauce. Maybe it's, it could be anything, but what is unique about you? What is your super differentiator that makes me want to look into what, even as an investor, something different? Again, it's beyond different. It's beyond just simple differentiation. It's differentiation in the extreme. What is the competition? Who is your competition? Can you ultimately do the same kind of content about them as you do with you? Do you know everything about your competition? If not, you have homework to do. And what is your go-to plan to the marketplace? What's your plan? And that's where we get into the concept of what you're dealing with in this larger workshop. How do we actually go to the market? One of the ways, he teaches you very, very much how to enter the market. This guy here is going to tell you how to break the rules and how to break people's fingers to get what you want. This guy is going to teach you how to actually do what really happens in entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial endeavors. And I'm going to give you some examples. So I've highlighted the red elements. Let's go into the last four. What's the timeline? Do you have when is this thing going to actually take place? What are the basic financials? Can you showcase forecast of cash flow, for example? Do you have a pricing strategy? Do you have a marketing plan? Do you have a marketing mix that's very clear? And by the way, if I'm talking about concepts and ideas, marketing plans, integrated business plans, all of those kinds of things, and if you don't know what they mean, that's why you have access to us, and we're here to help you. What is the plan to scale the business, meaning grow without your costs going down, increasing? That's what happened with the OFO bikes. They grew too quickly, they scaled like crazy, but then they went out of business because they had no money to pay the bills. And then finally, what is your growth to continue to grow? And what is your plan to leave? In other words, you've built this beautiful company, this product. Likely you've been in business, hopefully for more than 5 years before you have the audacity and take the massive risk of giving it over to someone else, or giving it over to, some other exit, if you will. Couple of last things, the 10 mistakes of entrepreneurs. This is really important. Pay close attention. Number one, multiplying big numbers by 1%, okay? Meaning we're gonna make tons and tons of bikes because that's where the market is. Rather, fix that problem by calculating from the bottom. Calculating from 0% is the best place to start. Number two, as I've said before, scaling too fast. Instead, create sales. We must have sales first. Again, if you have, I see a lot of you are piping into the chat, feel free to just ask me directly. Number three is to form partnerships. That's a mistake. Instead, focus on sales. You can get a partner, that's fine, but the partner ultimately needs to be part of the culture of the firm. Number four, focusing on fundraising is a major mistake. Instead, focus on prototyping. Make the perfect product first. Get it done. Maybe you need funding to make that product. You have to do many different things, which is one of the other mistakes down below. Mistake
Hey,
number
Sean?
5. Go ahead.
Yeah, don't want to interrupt, but one of the entrepreneurs is asking if you can elaborate a little bit more on mistake 1 before you move on to the rest of them.
Sure. Mistake 1, multiply by 1%. What that really is saying is that you see in your head opportunity. The opportunity is that you're going to enter the marketplace and say, okay, we're going to be able to grow even by 1% market share, for example. And that's your aim. Instead, start with nothing. Start with ground zero. Start calculating from zero and then go up. Too many people jump in, like the bike example, and produce a gazillion bikes and no one's there to buy them. Okay. Let me go on to number 6. Proceed serially, meaning the mistake is to think that you need to proceed linearly, if you will. Okay. First, we're going to do this, then we're going to prototype, then we're going to build a business plan, then we're going to get funding. That doesn't work like that. It works in a paralleled, multitasked way. In fact, if that's one of the major takeaways for you, is to proceed in a multitask mindset. If you need help, get help. If you need to delegate, get some people to help you. But it doesn't happen in a linear way. It happens in clumps and fits and starts. Number 7, retain financial control. That's the mistake. Instead, in other words, retaining control of the value of the firm. Instead, increase the value proposition by growing. In other words, let me say it this way. Retaining financial control means that you carve out a section of that market and then exploit it, keep it, defend it. That's a pretty normal thing most people do. The entrepreneur wants, instead, think of it as increasing the value or increasing the size of the pie of opportunity. How do you do that? Well, we get into that in other parts of the seminar, but also when reaching out to us outside of the meeting. Using patents for defensibility. Hey, we have a cool patent. That's really great, and that's going to be our competitive advantage. In fact, use success for defensibility. In other words, we have created value. We have shown that the prototype works. We have shown that we can create revenues through sales. We have an operational plan. We have success. Now we can defend our organization. And finally, the mistake is hiring your image. You are the company. Rather, you should complement the company and almost it's behind the scenes. It's not about you. It's about making sure that the company continues on and can continue to grow by serving customers and creating new ones. And finally, number 10 is to befriend your investors. Maybe that's a big takeaway for you today. Instead, befriending the banker, befriending your investors, it's really about exceeding expectation. At the end of the day, folks, it's about results. You've heard that a lot. It's about producing results. Entrepreneurs are a dime a dozen. Entrepreneurs are idea creators, but entrepreneurship is actually creating that enterprise of supply and demand. So we don't have time to create a mantra. Hold on just one second. We don't have time to do this piece. And my time is a bit limited today with great sadness, but I'm going to come out of here for just a minute.
So let me get you a few questions that were from that mistake list you did. So Kevin wants to know, what is the mistake when it comes to forming partnerships? So I guess what are some key things to watch out for when you're forming partnerships, from Kevin?
The partnership thing, partners are good. Partners are not ultimately. I think the best way of looking at it is if you go all in, partnership or bust, that puts too much, it gives too much opportunity for mistakes and again, control. You lose control. Instead, what you want to do is recognize, I'll put it up there again.
Yeah, because we've got a few more also from that. So if you can leave that list up for a sec, that'd be good.
For example, I want to be very clear. Partnerships can be helpful. Partnerships in operations, partnerships in manufacturing, and so on. But your focus shouldn't be on the partnership in its entirety. It should be, again, on the basics of creating the sale, creating the customer. Yes, indeed, your partnership may, in fact, help you create sales. But too often we get too deep into who your partners are. They all have their own, and maybe this is the takeaway, they all have their own self-interest, which is very normal. You have your own self-interest. Your partner has his or her own self-interest. Your number one interest is customer creation. What's another question?
So Kieran wants to know, how does mistake number 6 gel with mistake number 4? He's basically asking, can I not focus on sales and partnerships in parallel?
I think that's a good point. I think that's a good way of looking at one of the major takeaways, I think, is are you able to multitask? Partnerships, fine, but not at the cost of sales. So what are you going to do about it? You have to, so what are you doing ultimately to ensure that we're not just doing things in buckets, linearly, one thing at a time? We have to do all of it at the same time, not because we're disorganized, but that's how markets sort of force us to innovate simultaneously, have a cash flow issue, or create cash flow, all of it has to happen at the same time. And this is important. And I'm glad you asked that question. It's important because we have to recognize that entrepreneurial activity isn't clean. Having a job is clean. You do it and you're done. Running a business is more dynamic than just doing a function. Creating a business, everything happens at the same time. And you don't know, you can control as much as you can control, but you often can't control when opportunity runs off a cliff or when opportunity hits you and you weren't even expecting it. Multitasking is key. I just learned something the other day. I read something the other day that people were complaining. It was actually Harvard Business Review was saying multitasking is not good. That's the simple version. Multitasking takes you away from focus. And I was laughing because it contradicts this. And I'm more of an entrepreneurial thinker and a strategic thinker, which is, very dynamic and complex and has many variables which requires multitasking. It doesn't require you to text and drive, but I'll bet you every one of us on this call today does just that, because you don't want to miss the call and you know how to do dangerous things at the same time.
So one other question that's come in from Milan is, for innovation companies with a B2B licensing business model and no intent to manufacture a product, how can they engage SBIR since there is no direct path to commercialization? I don't know, maybe Martin, that one would be better for you since you are an SBIR specialist, but Sean, if you want to answer it as well, feel free.
My advice, well, actually, I was going to pass that on to Martin because he's more directly aligned. See, I'm multitasking. Martin, take it away.
Sure, no worries. And thanks for fielding these questions, by the way, Scott. Much appreciated. Anyway,
No
I think Milan, you'll have to correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, but you had a follow-on question which disappeared.
Oh, that was about just a business plan. I thought we'd just answer it here in this.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The question is Sean, is that Milan is developing, I believe, his company is a B2B licensing business model. Doesn't plan to do his own manufacturing, probably with a B2B licensing model, no sales and distribution as well. Therefore, he is saying, if I have a B2B out licensing business model, he's saying, therefore, no direct path to commercialization. What's your take on that perspective? Is that how you would see things?
I think we need to get more insights from Milan. For example, well, are you able to come onto the call? Can we hear?
Milan, can you be free to come in and chat a little bit further and clarify that? You had asked this same question, I believe, in a prior with one of the agencies as well, if I remember correctly.
I think Hannah can invite Milan on if
Can you do
So
that?
I have an option. I have an idea. Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, but I have a class waiting for me. You guys are my great priority. And also I have a whole bunch of students waiting for me as we speak. But I want Milan to feel free to email me and we can do an exchange and I can get the right, a more comprehensive response. Does that sound fair?
John,
that's no problem. And then and we can answer a lot of these questions, Martin. So if Sean needs to take off, it's no problem.
Sean, thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. Any chance that we can have your slides?
I'll work that out with you, Martin. Not a problem.
Okay. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Sean,
take care, everyone. Best of luck. And again, here's a big takeaway is you have access to all of us. Please reach out and we're here to help. We want to see you succeed. We don't want to see this. Here, let me leave you with this. Here, this will be my parting. Hold on. There's really no easy way to do it, but there you go. Remember that, and then we'll talk again. Take care, everyone. Good to be with you.
Sean,
thanks,
thank
Sean.
you very much indeed. Bye for now. Be safe.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
So Martin, do you want to see if we can get, so Milan is just basically asking, how can a company have a business plan or what would it look like for a licensing? So, I mean, a licensing, a startup is going to be a licensing play. There's a couple of things to think about on if you're going to be a licensing play. One is you're most probably not going to be able to raise capital. So in terms of professional capital, that's angel investment or venture capital. You may be able to, of course, raise friends and family money or get an SBA loan or some other or a bank loan, but you won't be able to raise capital in general. So if your plan is to scale by raising capital, the licensing model is not a great way to go. But it doesn't mean you can't build a great business. And there's another question here from Gustavo.
Can I jump into that if you don't mind?
No,
Scott?
but yeah, no, definitely. What I'm saying is there's another related question from Gustavo, and I was also going to kind of talk about both at the same time, but go ahead and answer the Milan
fire away,
question.
and then I'll follow on. The only point that I was actually going to make, however, Scott, is that, and I've done this before, Scott, you have done this many times likewise, is that even if your plan is an out licensing deal, and we do that, as most of you know, extensively in the life sciences and other areas, because quite frankly, a lot of times it just doesn't make business sense to populate your balance sheet. You know, we want to keep a lot of things off the balance sheet, debt, sales, and so forth. Regardless, we have always counseled, if you want to make a sale to build a relationship with whoever your strategic partnership is going to be with, or who you're going to out license to, you have to have a business plan or a commercialization plan in order to convince them that what you have is of value to them. Okay, so
Excellent
it's not
point.
just simply a Kevin Costner Field of Dreams. I've got a terrific piece of technology here. It's transformative. It's innovative. Would you like it? You have to convince them that this is something that's commercializable. It's sustainable. It's lucrative. You really do need to present to them a commercialization plan. So that's my counter, Milan. With regard to, even though you have a B2B licensing business model, you still must put together a plan, revenue plan, and a commercialization plan for whoever you're going to be working with. And
Yeah, that's
also,
a great point. Yeah, yeah, you're going
to sell outright to them, you still need to convince them that this is something that is viable, commercializable.
That's right. You still need to build a business, and like Martin said, you're still into your financials and a pro forma and all the other things you would do to build and grow a business. I think for Gustavo's question, he's asking how to go about it if you want to create a technology business without using VC. Well, obviously, for Gustavo, that's something that is hard but doable. So it's not. There's no. If you can organically grow a business, then that's great. The challenge for technology businesses is that it becomes very challenging if you're trying to grow organically and all your competitors have raised venture capital. You will most probably get destroyed. You'll most probably have all your market share taken. And as we know, in most technology businesses, there aren't really that many unique ideas out there. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs come to us and say, I help. We mentor a couple hundred tech startups with our program that's putting this event on, which is called Epic SBDC. And yeah, I mean, I know a lot of entrepreneurs are really excited about their idea and they think there's no competition. They're almost, I don't know, I can't think of any startup that doesn't have competition. Maybe there's a couple if I think about it, but in general, you have competition. So the only challenge you have about trying to scale and grow organically is that you may get crushed by those who have raised capital because they can grow typically faster than you can. Now, there are cases where that actually isn't true. Like, for example, the big email provider, MailChimp. Last I checked, and I believe it's still true, they grew and scaled into a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, it's still private, so I think they're private. But anyway, they didn't raise venture capital, and they were able to grow through their revenue and their sales and continue to scale. And obviously, they're one of the biggest email providers for individuals and businesses. So it's not to say you can't do it. It's just rare for technology businesses to be able to get to where they need to go without investment. So if that makes sense, if you want to add anything else, Martin, and also if you want to follow up.
Investment doesn't necessarily mean VC investment. It's investment. And my point here, Gustavo, is that at least a couple times in my past life with regard to liquidity events, exits and so forth, was that I did not go to VCs at all. I went to a corporate business development. Instead, this is why we had, for example, Jim Lano yesterday join us with his panel of 5 senior officers from corporations who specialize in business development. You can identify with careful due diligence a prospective corporate partner, early adopter, who is willing to work in concert with you, finance you, and carry it hopefully all the way to a planned liquidity event. Ultimately, that may end up being that same corporation acquiring your company. That's non-VC. That being said, as Scott has indicated, it is still equity based, which means that company, of course, will be taking a stake in your venture, regardless of whether it ultimately ends up acquiring you or not. There are some, of course, complications there, but the aim is to find the right strategic fit. If we can find the right corporate investor who will then give you not only the cash flow capital that is required, but also all of the other resources, human, sales, manufacturing, distribution, everything else that may come into play, capacity, depending upon what you need for regulatory affairs and so forth. So without a VC, there are other ways to get it funded, but it is still, as Scott indicated, it's equity based.
Hey, Martin, here's one from Aaron for you. Where can I get additional resources and guidance for phase 1 applicants that are submitting commercialization plans? So obviously Aaron's talking about SBIRs. That's for you to answer that one.
Well, yeah, you can come directly to us, Aaron. Reach out to us, send us an email, or send Misty or me an email, and we'll be very happy to chat with you about everything pertaining to phase 1.
Hey, Misty, can you throw the your contact info in the chat so Aaron can see it? All right, thanks, Aaron. So if anyone, other entrepreneurs, while we have a few minutes left, oh, great, thanks, thanks, Stuart. Glad you enjoyed it. Any other entrepreneurs or startups have any questions about any of the stuff we talked about, which is, go-to-market plan, commercialization plan, fundraising, SBIR? Martin and I, again, we work with about 200 startups through our program, and we do the same, a lot of the same work that Sean does. Sean is a business school professor, and we're running our program outside of business school just for community entrepreneurs. So let's see, Sean.
We are also
Sean's email, I guess, Kieran, why don't you send a note to Misty, and let's because we didn't get a chance to ask him if he wanted it shared with everybody. So Sylvia, are you asking yeah. So I think Misty just put her email in the chat, if you can see that, Sylvia. And then Kieran, can you just send a note to Misty and just see, we'll ask Sean, because I don't want to just.
We should ask Sean before we publish it.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
I think that he had indicated reach out to me. What we'd like to do, however, is again get his clearance from Sean, and then make the connection between you both. If you're asking, can I have your email? You're probably chasing after Scott, but if not, either one, you're more than welcome, of course, to have mine. And I think Scott probably.
I'll just we'll put them in here. So basically the way, so for those of you who don't know the program that we're part of, our EPIC program, the idea is that we've got a team of 15 mentors. I'm one of them, and Martin's one of them. We each kind of focus in different areas, although we all have expertise as entrepreneurs. But so, Martin does a lot of other things, but he also is one of the most amazing SBIR mentors in the country, actually. So he ends up doing a lot of that work, but he can also help in every other facet of business. And I focus more on fundraising. So I tend to, once the startup has gotten to a point where they're ready to raise capital, I help with angel investment and venture capital raises, and also corporate partnerships, as Martin mentioned. Martin and I both work on those. And then I also help manage. We have a venture fund called the Highlander Fund that I help to manage. That's a UCR venture fund. invests in our region and in UCR alums and UCR projects, but also community projects in the region. And then we also have a tremendous amount of other things we do. We do a lot of work with startups on their financials, their go-to-market plans and strategies, pro formas, pitch decks. We also have a couple of mentors who are experts at building sales team and biz dev teams. So in any case, if you have any questions about anything startup related, we can definitely, we're here to help. All the help and mentoring we provide to the startup community is no cost to the startup. So yeah, so I guess we have a few more minutes left. If there are no more questions, we can end early. But if there are,
let me just
a couple
wrap up.
came in too. Yeah.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
yeah, let's take a look at those before I wrap up.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's check out Stuart's.
Stuart, okay, thank you, Sean. Okay, terrific. There's our emails. There's yours.
And then I can answer Stuart's. Let me just. So, what makes funders impatient when seeing a pitch? What would they rather see instead? So, in general, and again, this is I'm focusing this answer on professional angel investors and venture capitalists. They typically want to see a well put together deck, basically. And if you don't know how to put together a strong deck, like I said, get in touch with us. We do this all day long, all week long. We've worked on hundreds of pitch decks, and so yeah, get in touch with us. But in general, there's a pretty basic 10 to 12 slides pitch deck kind of template that almost every VC is used to seeing. I wouldn't stray from that because they typically want to see things broken out, and get in touch with us. We can review what you have. If it needs tweaking, we can help you with that. We can also send you various templates and also show you examples of other startups that have done a good job of raising capital. So Stuart, just get in touch with us. But in general, what makes them impatient is if you're not basically talking about a big problem that you're solving and why you're the team to solve it. That's pretty much what they want to hear. It needs to be a big market, a big problem in general, and they want to understand why you're the team that is going to solve it versus anyone else. Anything you want to add to that, Martin?
No, I'm just reading Gustavo's question below, which sounds like a classic example of the Clayton Christensen Harvard business model of disruptive innovation and so forth. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but basically.
No, go ahead and take the question.
Yeah, large corporations, Gustavo, obviously control large swaths of a market share. When they do that, as you probably already know, they may become complacent. And there will be a certain portion of the market that they will no longer be addressing, the ones that may not necessarily be delivering the highest margins for them. That is your niche market to identify and go after. So it's not a matter of you trying to compete wholeheartedly and full on with a large corporation. It's to identify, according to Clayton Christensen, that portion of the market that is being ignored and not being taken care of by that particular corporation. Find it, discover it, go meet with them, give them exactly what they want. And often you indicated that your solution is cheaper. That's exactly what they're looking for. They are no longer of interest to the large corporation because those customers are not delivering the margins that they desire. So they're ignoring them. They're not treating them well. They're not communicating with them. So that is your niche. You need to focus on that niche and only that particular niche. That's the Clayton Christensen disruptive innovation model. Get in touch with us, and we'll break away from the esoteric academese talk that I just conveyed to you, and we'll translate all of that into English. But reach out to us. I'd be very happy to chat with you much further on this initiative that you're working on. So overall, unless Scott, you want to say something, we probably do need to start wrapping this things up. The reason why we had a workshop on commercialization plans is, as I indicated at the beginning, there are two areas that we call deal killers. And that's because those are the two areas, for the most part, that why we get rejected in our SBIR proposals. The first one is the study approach, research design and management. And that's because most of us may not have been trained as researchers at a university. So we do a pretty bad job there. That's why tomorrow we're having someone else go over for an hour, hour and a half on research and methods and how we need to think about it and present it. But the second one is the commercialization plan. And just because the SBIR agency is giving us questions that we need to answer when they're asking us to deliver to them a commercialization plan, most of us are woefully inadequate in creating a workable, fundable, believable, trustworthy commercialization plan. Our aim today was, no, that's tomorrow, Mina. We'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, the aim today was for Sean to give you the essentials in terms of everything that you need to think about. So that was a mission accomplished. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we accomplished the mission in terms of tying this seamlessly into an SBIR proposal presentation. So I'd love to hear back from you. If this is what you were looking for, terrific. If it was helpful, tell us why. If it was not what you're looking for, tell us why as well. And we'll continue to refine this. But I hope this was of value to you. We will have access to the slides that Sean prepared. We will be more than happy to work in collaboration with you to develop your commercialization plan. Those slides are worth careful consideration. And we look forward to working with you. Did you want to wrap up anything as well, Scott?
Well, I just wanted to answer Gustavo. I put Misty, Martin, and my email are in the chat, Gustavo. So if you can see that chat, just go ahead and copy those, copy the emails out of there, and you can get in touch with us that way. And then to answer Dan's question, is there a criteria or stage an entrepreneur needs to be to make use of our services? No, I mean, it depends. I mean, in terms of like trying to raise capital, yes, we need to vet to see if you're ready to raise capital. But in terms of everything else, we have a team of 15 entrepreneurs and residents who help all stages of technology startups. So Dan, feel free to reach out. Our info's in the chat once again. And then Martin, you were going to mention to Mina when that other presentation she was asking about, or he or she was
Mina,
asking
yeah,
about.
if your question was the National Institute of Nursing Research, that is scheduled for tomorrow at 9. That's when Christopher Bowe is going to be speaking with us. So 9 o'clock, and he still has time for a one-on-one meeting. So Mina, if you are interested in spending some personal one-on-one time with him to discuss an initiative of yours, don't hesitate to sign up. At 10 o'clock, we have the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research. Now, this is an esoteric topic for most of you, but if this is an area that may be a fit, consider attending that one as well. So 9 o'clock, National Institute of Nursing Research, 10 o'clock, National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research. Then at 1 o'clock, we've got Professor Jillian Wilson, who is going to be discussing with us in fairly comprehensive detail. And she has 4 examples of successful SBIR plans. She will go over those and her thoughts in detail on how to develop a winning, fundable research design, which is absolutely critical. And by the way, how to present it and how to manage it. So
Awesome.
see us tomorrow.
Well, thanks everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And don't forget, we also have a bunch of great events next week. This is a 2-week conference. And I threw up the details. Someone else was asking about details for all the different, it's that link that's there. You can grab that and you can go see all the details about everything that Martin just mentioned tomorrow, plus what's coming up next week as well. So I guess we can wrap it up, huh, Martin?
I guess we can do that. Everybody, thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. Stay well, be healthy, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, bye
Thanks.
for now.
Bye.